This is episode number 113 featuring artist Cami Mendlik. And she's a single mom who built a painting career while raising two kids. It's a great story. You don't want to miss it.
This is the PleinAir podcast with Eric Rhodes, publisher and founder of PleinAir magazine. In the PleinAir podcast, we cover the world of outdoor painting. Called PleinAir, the French coined the term, which means open air or outdoors. The French pronounce it plein air. Others say plein air. No matter how you say it, there is a huge movement of artists around the world who are going outdoors to paint. And this show is about that movement. Now, here's your host, author, publisher, and painter, Eric Rhodes.
Thank you, announcer Jim Kipping, and welcome to the PleinAir podcast. I'm getting excited because so many people are discovering PleinAir painting, and they're discovering it through the magazine, on the newsstands, and of course, they're hearing about the PleinAir convention from the podcasts and other things. We've got posters in art stores all over America talking about the PleinAir convention, and it's going to be a lot of fun in San Francisco. I was just out there, and we found some great, amazing, iconic spots, not too terribly far from the hotel. You got to drive or take an Uber, but there's plenty of parking. We even hired a parking, it's like a marketing consultant, a parking consultant, and who's helping us figure out the traffic patterns and everything so you don't have any problems. And of course, we've got security and everything, but you're not going to need it. So if you've looked at the faculty lineup, great. If you haven't seen it lately, check it out at pleinairconvention.com. And we've reinvented the basics course. For those of you who have never painted in PleinAir, want to try it. For those of you who don't have your gear yet, want to try it. For those of you who've never even painted before and want to try it, the PleinAir Basics course is essentially reinvented, all new instructors, and basically we have things that tell you the equipment to use, what not to use, what works outside, what doesn't work outside, how to make it easy, how to plan your paintings, how to do thumbnail sketches, all that kind of stuff. And then we will have some really well-known artists who are in there teaching in their specific discipline, like oil painting or watercolor painting or acrylic, pastel. So you can get a feel for all of them, find out which one you want or want to do. And then, of course, after that, if you don't have any stuff with you, and a lot of people come, they don't have any stuff, you could go into the expo hall and basically get everything you want. I mean, there are easels in there, or oils, or pastels, or brushes, or panels, or, everything is very PleinAir specific. So anyway, the field painters for the basics course, field painters are people who help when we're out in the field painting. These are specialists for the basics course. So they're going to be with you, all the beginners. If you want to hang together, you're going to paint together. Those instructors are going to be there working with you on your paintings. It's going to be a great opportunity. And so anyway, you don't want to miss the basics course. It's a pre-convention thing. You got to pay a little extra money for that, but it's well worth it. It'll probably save you a couple of years of experimentation. That's why I created it, because I went through wasting a lot of years that I didn't need to waste. And of course, San Francisco is going to be magical. And if you're concerned about the big city issues, and every city has big city issues all around the country, we're putting together an indoor painting arena and projecting big screen video of the places we're going to be painting. So when we're out painting the Golden Gate Bridge, you can stay in the hotel and paint the Golden Gate Bridge, and you'll see the seagulls flying over, and you'll hear the tugboats going by, or whatever happens to be happening, because it's going to be kind of like a PleinAir experience indoors. And that's really, we don't necessarily recommend that, but it's okay. This is really for people who just are intimidated about driving or parking, or might be a little concerned about homelessness, or whatever issues might come up. We just have set it up in there so you can just go to the hotel where we hold all of our events. We have events there from early morning until late at night, and of course breaks for lunch and dinner and stuff like that, so you can go out and get some. And there's a lot of restaurants around the hotel that are pretty close, and of course there's meals in the hotel if you want to stay inside. And there's a lot of very reasonably priced food very close. For instance, there's a Subway across the street, so that's pretty cool. So anyway, that's the PleinAir convention. I'm also pretty excited about the Publishers Invitational. June is going to be here before we know it. I love going up into the early spring, summertime in the Adirondacks. It's just such a beautiful time. The greens are so rich. And I've never seen so many. I think they said there's 128 different variations of greens in the Adirondacks. And so we just get together and we paint for a week. There's no instruction, just a bunch of us having fun painting. Anybody's welcome. We don't have invitations anymore. We killed that whole invitation idea, but we still call it the Publisher's Invitational. And we go to some of the places where the Hudson River School painters actually painted. You will have the ability to stand in the very spot to paint a waterfall or a stream or a mountain or a lake. There's Beardstadt, Homer, the Hudson River School painters, they all were around there. So that's going to be pretty cool. There's more information on that at publishersinvitational.com. And of course, if you're interested also in the convention, that's pleinairconvention.com. Anyway, coming up after the interview, I've got a couple of great art marketing questions, and you don't want to miss those. But first, let's get right to this really, really good interview. One of the easiest interviews I've ever had to do. Cami Mendlik. Cami Mendlik, welcome to the PleinAir podcast.
Thanks, Eric. I'm excited.
Where do we find you today?
I am sitting in my studio in Stillwater, Minnesota in the St. Croix River Valley.
So
it's cold out.
Yeah, I would imagine it's really cold. Like how cold?
Like 10 below cold today, but warm in the studio.
All right. Well, thanks for doing this. I appreciate it. And, you've got quite a story. I think we'll just start there. Kind of tell us your story. How did this whole journey of painting begin for you?
Oh, that is that big open-ended, broad question.
Yeah.
So, where to start, except I've always been interested and always drawing since I was a child, and didn't really realize I could go down the path of a career in painting, but it didn't take long until that's really all I wanted to do, and I was pretty much willing to do whatever it takes to get there, wherever that was going to be. And I was at the time willing to be poor to do that at the time, being young. I started studying. I started at 18 studying classical realism, and was fortunate enough to find a mentor who kind of took me under her wings. And
let's stop there. I want to probe that just a little bit. So,
sure.
What age were you? And 18?
Mm-hmm.
And who was the classical mentor? Because I know there was a big classical movement up there in Minneapolis
yes.
from the Richard Lack studio. Was this something that had to do with that?
Yeah, so I'm a ripple effect of the Lack school. So Mary Pettis, who lives here in the Valley too, I found her work at a I think it was like a Wild Wing show or something, some convention in Minneapolis, and I found her work. And at the time, she was I think she had just started up her own atelier and just left Richard Lack's, and basically, I would not leave her alone. I just kept kind of coming around asking her, how do you do this? Would you teach me? And at first she wasn't super excited about that. And then finally, I just kept bouncing back and showing up, and she did take me under her wings, and I started studying at her atelier when I was 18, and I had also taken some drawing and figurative classes through the local universities in Minneapolis and St. Paul.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there, and I want to just stop because there's a couple of things that I think are important to point out to some of our listeners.
Right.
As you know, there are people who enter into this podcast who may have discovered it by mistake and don't necessarily know our terminology or other people's terminology. So let's start out simple. Tell everybody what an atelier is.
Well, it's a real classical, it's not reinventing the wheel in any way, but it's a real classical approach to painting, representational painting. And oftentimes, at the time I started out by learning the sight size method, which is a method of, you use a plumb line, and we spent we would spend weeks or months drawing a cast, for instance.
You mean like the cast on an arm, right?
Right. Well, no. No.
Gotcha.
No.
Well, again,
So,
I think,
yeah.
for the benefit of the for the benefit of the audience, those who might not know this, and then we'll go back into that.
Yeah, that's
An
good.
atelier would be the studio of an artist that teaches, and sometimes it's a single artist, and sometimes it's a school, but it's usually an artist who teaches, and it would be oftentimes it's characterized as in the classical tradition, but it really could be anything. For instance, Cami if you had a studio now and you were teaching out of your home or your studio, you could have an atelier that teaches plein air painting, right?
Right. Yes,
Right.
you could do that.
Right. And so drawing from a cast, what you're talking about is a cast being the cast of a sculpture. In other words, a plaster copy of a sculpture.
Right.
Okay.
And you're learning, they're breaking down the elements, you're learning drawing, and you're learning, I think they even called it shading at the time, but values and the range from light to dark and usually charcoal or black and white. And, you don't even paint at first, but, so it's a good thing. It's a good grounding, it's a really firm grounding. So, and then I moved to doing still lifes, and I would take 9 months to do a huge still life. and I was very methodical and meticulous about it. But boy, every day for 8-10 hours a day, every day I was doing that on, the same painting eventually, where I was having nightmares that the building was going to burn down and my painting was going to be in there and my life would be over, so, but I really got to the point of feeling like there was something more. And I'm glad I had that training, but I felt more. And I was also painting outside, but I didn't know that it was even called anything. It just was very practical and free. The models were free. The trees were free. The bridge was free. I could go out and just look at it. And study it. And so I was painting plein air, but I didn't know that's what I was doing.
Well, Mary, of course, is a very accomplished plein air painter. And was that something that she had encouraged, or did you just do it on your own?
No, she didn't know what it was either at the time. I remember her coming back so she was, being represented and doing wildlife paintings at the time in the big print market and trying to get out of it, I think. But I remember her taking a workshop. This is when workshops were just kind of starting to surface, and there weren't workshops like there are today, and it wasn't so, the access to learning wasn't so readily available. Like, we're so fortunate now to all this information everywhere, but it wasn't such a thing. And she came back from out west, and I remember her flying around, literally, like running through the fields saying, I painted a painting in a day. And I thought, what? A day? No way. She goes, yes, you can paint a painting in a day. So that was just, profound, and was profound to her too. And she said, it's called alla prima, and she was like, so this was new. This was taking, even in the last 15 years, where, the Midwest has really, really grown a lot in the arts. But at the time, there weren't many around. There was a lot of wildlife artists around here, and it's not bad. It's just, it's just different than, what I'm doing. But so anyways, she started really studying too, and taught me how to be a student, an eternal student. And then I was now early 20s, and got married and had was pregnant and with my first child. And I remember being 23 and mortified that I was just finally getting it, and I wasn't going to be able to paint for a while. I thought I was really getting it, at 23. Isn't that funny? And she told me, just paint with your eyes. And then it wasn't long, my first baby was born, and then I had a second one, and then I was painting facades in my basement, and all along I was also selling my paintings. I didn't even really know, but I was making a living, selling my paintings. And I had prints at the time, and I did a lot of the local architectural renderings of our little historic town here. So, I was already doing it, but I didn't really, I don't know. I just kept, I had to paint. And I learned, I used the egg timer approach of technique of getting a 160-minute, pochade in a day.
So explain to everybody what a pochade is.
So a pochade is really it's French. It's a quick study, but it's a rough sketch is really what it is. And I think it was probably, it's not, we're not reinventing this, but I think Kevin McPherson was one of the first ones I think that kind of put the pochade challenge or pochade study or something like that. I shouldn't quote exactly because I can't remember, but that's where I kind of saw that. And Mary had, I think, taken a workshop with him or something in Hawaii or something and kind of passed that along to me. And the idea that you could just find 60 minutes a day to do a painting. So I've redefined it for my own teaching and my own sake. I just took the idea of the quick study or the quick sketch. And I think of it as a quick color sketch is what I do. And see what you can get in 60 minutes authentically by studying from life. And that's a thing. If you go back, if we look at even just Levitan or Innes or, there's just different painters I've studied from the past that have sketches and then they would go back in the studio along with their pencil drawings or their charcoal drawings and along with their pochades, and then they would work on larger studio pieces. In the studio. So the pochades are really good, and I still teach that to my students. We have pochade challenges.
Do you know what they call them in Russia?
What's that?
Do you know what they call a pochade in Russia?
No, I don't.
Etude. E-T-U-D-E. Etude.
Etude. I did not know that. I learned something.
You learn something new every day.
I know, it's true. It's true. I'll just have to be here for it. Yep. Cool. That's neat.
So I'm curious. I want to kind of probe on the mom thing because it's something that, all of us face, or some of us face anyway, when we're trying to deal with families. When my kids were born, and I had to paint, and so I put the baby monitor on my easel and went out in the backyard or went out in the front yard and painted just so I could be painting, even though it might not have been the most spectacular thing. What did you do? How did you manage to squeeze it in with two kids?
Yeah, so I did the pochades. I had more energy, than I was in my 20s. I'm 45 now, and now they're 18 and 20, which is amazing to me. But I would just set time every day. And with the exception that I know life happens and someone might throw up on you one day or something might happen, but even my kids knew they would, I would be down in my studio. This is when I was in a different house and had a space in the house, and I set an egg timer, and they had an egg timer and I had an egg timer, and they were little. My son was in diapers, and they'd run down and I'd say, okay, Mama's going to go paint, and set the egg timer, and they would know that when that 60 minutes was done, brushes down, and they would come ripping down the stairs, brushes down, Mama, brushes down, and they'd get flying around the corner, and I can picture them doing it, like they, it was even at that age, it was a communication deal of setting my boundaries that I'm going to paint right now and communicating with whoever was in my life at the time. And that's what I still do and just setting it aside, because sometimes we put our self-induced guilt or something that we think we can't do it. But usually the biggest problem, with exceptions of life happens, I get that, but is that we just don't communicate and say, this is, like I check in, I have check-in nights on Sundays, and I tell my students and people I mentor, Sundays are a great night to check in with the people that you're around you or whoever might compromise your time or, whatever that is. And just, you kind of know what the week is going to look like. So I've been doing that. And that's just part of my routine is, for the most part, I check in with myself or whatever it might be going on Sundays. And I kind of try to write it down and make it happen. And set goals. I set goals, and I set goals so that they're challenging, but I can achieve them.
Well, talk to me about that a little bit. Make us understand that.
So I think the idea of setting big goals can be overwhelming because of the fear of not achieving them. And then you feel, maybe you even feel rejected or from yourself or from your accomplishments or whatever it is. But if we set goals that are realistic and really, and then soon after that, I became a single mother. And I was truly supporting my children on my art. And I didn't know if I was really going to be able to do it, but I thought, well, I have to try. So I'm not saying this with the support of, somebody financially supporting me. I didn't have that. So I really feel like I can share this and say you can make time. You might not be able to make as much time as you want, but you can set the time aside and make it happen. So whatever that is with the realistic goals, January is a good time. I write down kind of how I'd like my weeks to look in general with my work now. I did that then too. It's just developed because now I'm busy. I have it's going well. So that's good. And with going well comes more work and responsibilities. But I set monthly goals, I set annual goals, I set 5-year goals, like maybe what I think it might look like in 5 years, with the realization that I've got enough wisdom to know that it can change, and I'm okay with that. Because sometimes just getting the pen to the paper helps to open up doors that you might not have even envisioned happening. The opportunities.
Most of us who set long-term goals, 5-year, 10-year goals, have to constantly change those goals anyway. It's hard to predict out more than 2 or 3 years, and the world changes and your thoughts change and what you're interested in changes. And so 5 years, though it's good to have them, is also, you have to be flexible with all your goals. So I want to just kind of drill down on this a little bit further because you're real good at this, it appears. Give somebody the sense of what kind of goals you're setting for yourself. Are they strictly financial, or are there other types of goals?
Okay, so I've got, for instance, right now I'm actually working. I'm a little bit behind because we had some personal family things happen this last couple months. So I'm now working on them, and my goals, when I write it down, I first make sure that it's about becoming a better painter with continual growth. Like whatever my goals are, even if it's financial or spiritual, or if it's a big show I want to be in, or something I want to be invited to, or whatever it is, I make sure that it is to support the growth of my painting. And that's the question that I ask myself whenever I'm setting my goals. So then how I've done this is that I just have kind of woven the painting into my life, so that it's not separate. It's woven in. So I've categorized them. So there might be, and I'm sure you understand this, I'm sure all painters and any crafts person understands this, we're kind of balancing the fundamentals in a way, or the tools, like if we talk about value and drawing and color and, whatever we want to focus on. I'll kind of put an area for skills. If there's a place that I feel I need to strengthen one of the skills, like this last summer, for instance, I realized that one of the properties of color that I teach and study was getting a little bit weak. So I thought, okay, I need to kind of work on, reining in my saturation a little bit here, so I just, for 1 month, I concentrated really hard on saturation, and it really helped just to kind of focus on that one thing. So
that's called chunk learning.
It is.
You probably
it
know
is
that.
called. Yeah, I've heard that that's what it's being called now. Yes, which is kind of cool because it's exactly what I do and what I've done.
We did a video with Brian Mark Taylor called The Master's Mind, and he basically talked about how if you really want to learn something, rather than focusing on the the concept of 10,000 hours, you concentrate on a very small specific thing that you want to learn, and you just do it over and over and over and over again until you get better and better, until you master it. And actually doing things that way is much faster than trying to do all the things, right? So maybe instead of focusing on a whole landscape, you focus on clouds or trees or water or grass or mountains or, whatever.
Well, and I just want to add on to that, because my students were telling me about the Brian Mark Taylor, the DVD. Is it a DVD? And so one of them, she's like, you really need to see this. It's exactly what you're doing. So I want to tell everyone they should get that, because it actually, it's so effective, and it is really how I have operated since I was 18. It makes sense. It is how I think. It's not just doing the time, it's concentrating and breaking it down. So you can't just painting alone is not going to do it. It's breaking it down and then trying to put it together, and then breaking it down and then trying to put it together. So I saw it, and it was really good.
Let me challenge you on something for a second, because I'm just curious.
Sure.
We both know a lot of painters who get to a level of proficiency where they're pretty happy with themselves, and they stay there, and they kind of stay there forever.
Yeah.
And I can understand if you're a successful professional and you're in a particular place and you're making enough money doing it, why you might not want to fuss with it and get better, because you want to keep your income. At the same time, I'm curious what your thinking is on why you think it's important to get better, whether you're an amateur, whether you're a professional. What is it that drives you to want to get better and to want to constantly improve yourself?
Okay, so I love that. The reason it's motivating. It keeps me going to think that the best painting is coming tomorrow. If my best painting was today and they were going to stay the same, I can't see that would be fulfilling for me. And my painting is driven by curiosity. I know I'm making paintings, I get it, but I am truly driven and so curious to see what else I can get the paint to do. I constantly balance, like studying the fundamentals and improving them. And we can improve our drawing forever. The painting part is kind of easy. It's the getting the color right that's so difficult and challenging. The painting is painting, and the drawing we can improve forever, and the putting the pieces together. But it's that idea that the best is yet to come it's really driven me throughout my whole life, to think that it's like buying this property where I have the school now. It's like this was such a carrot in front of the horse for me to get through a lot of things. And the only constant was the painting. And, if it was just about making money, it's great to be making money painting. It's awesome. But I'm always thinking ahead, like, okay, well, that was good. I got that, or I had a good show, or that I got into that show, or But I'm already over it the second it's there. I'm already on to the next. Like, what else can I do? What else can this paint do, and where can it take me, and who can I see, and who can I meet, and who can I teach this to, and who can teach me? So to me, it's like the art of life, and the painting is my craft, and I have something to say, and I want to share it with people, but the thought of it just being about money, I'm pretty sure there's easier things to do than making a living as a painter.
Yeah, I would guess so. So you mentioned you mentioned buying some property and starting a school. Do you want to tell us about that?
Sure. Yeah. So I started. I didn't ever plan on teaching or having a school or anything like that, but one thing led to another, and I had a studio in Stillwater downtown, and people started asking me to teach them, and I started doing that here and there, and all of a sudden I was having classes, and all of a sudden I'm getting more and more curious about color, and I'm getting locally and regionally a nice following here, and people are now driving a few hours to take a weekly class every week, and it's just things like that, and I'm really interested and inspired by the painters of the past, and the thought that it's not a solo we're alone a lot, but I love the camaraderie, and I love the kindred spirits in the community, and I love teaching and helping people, with achieving their painting dreams. So I had the idea that I wanted to honor the St. Croix River Valley, which is the land that I love and has inspired so many paintings, and the people here for today and for tomorrow. So I wanted to found the school. So in 2008, I did start the St. Croix River School of Painting, and it's with an emphasis on color, which is my obsession and passion in life.
So you just completed a 10-year anniversary.
I did.
Wow.
We did. So 6 years ago, I decided I needed a location that I could have my home, save as much time as possible by just having the studio in the backyard. And I had a vision, and it was in my goals and dreams. And I really had little money, but I had a house in town, and I had a place I was renting, and my rent was going up. And I thought, this is it. I was 39 at the time, and I thought my goal, I was going to do this by the time I was 40. So it was a lot. I can't even believe it, really. But I purchased 17 acres, a 170-year-old farmhouse with a big barn that had potential to be a great studio and school. Half of it's marsh, and so the banks didn't see value. It was left here pretty much abandoned. I shouldn't say abandoned, but the people that had it moved back east, and it wasn't selling. And I saw potential, and so it's a story. It's a huge story in itself, but here we are 5 years later. January 24th was the closing date 5 years ago.
Well, congratulations. I mean, that's a pretty big thing to do. And on top of that, you did it as a painter. And on top of that, you did it as a single mom. That's pretty incredible.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's all the people. It's the students, and it's the collectors and the patrons. And, everybody pretty much believed in it and bought paintings and took classes. And that's how it happened. So if it wasn't for the patrons and collectors and students, it wouldn't be here. But it's to be used and shared, and it's working, and it's going well. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, outstanding. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Let's kind of let's move into the kind of the subject of women as painters. There has been how can I say this without making everybody angry? I think there's been this sense that, for many, many years that it's been all about guys. And there's obviously some great painters throughout history, but now there's more women painting than men, I think, and some incredible painters out there. What are the issues that you face? I know that you are a member of the AWA, the American Women Artists Association or something. And
right.
Talk about the issues that maybe you guys brainstorm about. I say guys, what a bad habit.
Well, that's okay.
Yeah.
I say that.
At least I didn't say gals.
You guys. Yeah, all you guys out there and gals. No.
Guys has become
I get it. It's okay.
Yeah. So
we're so nervous to say anything, it's just that's okay. So the issues that gosh, well, okay. I've come a long way because I was really, really fiery in my 20s, and I was told, by a male teacher to not define myself and separate myself, and not to even say that I was a woman painter, So I was told that, and that it could be a crutch, it could be an excuse, and so I kind of listened to that. And I know that there's some women and men out there that believe that still, because we could even go on the other side. Well, why did they get a women's group, and why can't we have a men's group? And that's all a debate to be had. But what I will say is that what we are women painters, and that is what we are. And there are things that women naturally experience that men can't, and it's the other way too. There are things that men naturally can experience that women can't, and so, for art, I'm all about authenticity and truthfulness and finding that, and it's there, but using my craft, my painting, as a vehicle, or to bring out that authenticity. So I feel that it's really important to be proud of that and to be what we are. So I'm a female and I'm a woman painter. So that is something that, I want to share with younger painters. And now it's going to be fun to go into this next, hopefully, half of my life, where hopefully I can help and support, and advocate for younger women. I will say that it was challenging. For one thing, a lot of women want to have children and it takes a lot of energy and it takes a lot of time. And that is hard. That's a challenge, to have enough time in life to put the kind of time in it that you want. So you're facing that if you want to be a mother, because we're the ones that can have children to birth them. So there's that. There are it's not, this is a statistic, and AWA has all the statistics, but women's art is not being valued even monetarily as high as men's art. And that's not taking the statistics of anyone that just paints, but this is at a certain level and higher.
So do you think, so if you took, let's go on to that concept for a second. So if you, if you took 20 paintings, 10 by women, 10 by men, and you didn't put a signature on them, are you saying that they would sell for equal prices under that situation, or they'd sell for more if they had a male name on them versus a female?
Well, I'm not going to answer that directly, because I think I think there's some validity to that, but I don't know for sure why. And I also think that possibly this is a, oh boy, here we go. I'm tiptoeing on this sacred ground, but it could be that maybe some people don't value their work as much as other people. And I think that if you value your work and you believe in it, and this is for everyone, women and male, that, first of all, you have to have the work, but I think we can devalue ourselves. And I think that there has been situations where society has devalued, female work. And I think we know that from even the workforce beyond painting, that I just saw something, and I wish that I had this written down. I didn't know we were going to talk about this. I would have been better equipped for this statistics. But that,
by the way, you're going to get lots of cards and letters, both, and that's okay. And you're going to get some pro and some con probably. Well, right. I don't know. I don't want to get into the great debate. Quite frankly, I'm not qualified to make the debate.
I'm not either.
I would say that one of the issues that I think is going to change pretty rapidly is the concept of time and practice. And and so and this is digging a hole too, so I don't want to dig a hole.
Yeah.
But so let's just say in theory that 20 years ago there were more male painters than female painters. I don't know if that's true, by the way. I'm just saying, what if? And therefore, 20 years later, 20 years of experience behind these people might give those people, whoever they are, male or female, give them an edge up just because they've got 20 years of experience. And I would think that that might be what has driven some of it. It's just the time and exposure to collectors, names becoming well known, and whether they're male or female names. But I think this is changing rapidly, because since I've been in the PleinAir world, which has been about, 15 years or so, 16 because my wife was pregnant when I got into it. There are more women painting than there are men in the plein air world. Definitely. You go to the plein air convention and I'd say it's what, 80% female, probably?
Yes, I would say at least.
At least. And, our magazine.
Because we're looking at the field painters and, there's a lot of male field paint. Yeah, there's a lot of females for sure.
Yeah. So I think this is all changing dramatically. First off, you look at some of the painters out there. Look at Mary, for instance. I mean, Mary is so good, and every bit as accomplished as just about any other artist, male or female. It's just fabulous, and a lot of that is just time behind the easel. And
Right.
I think because we're going to see a real interesting trend if we look at this out a few years, we're going to see this all changing, not only because people like you and the AWA are bringing attention to it, not only because the world is bringing a lot of attention to it, but we're also going to see change just because of time. And
Right.
time, the fact that, John Stern said that, he said that the painters today that come to the plein air convention, he said this in the first year. He said some of the painters at the plein air convention who are first-time baby painters who have never painted before are just now starting. He said they're going to be teaching at this convention in 5 or 7 years. They're going to be the masters of art in America in 10 or 15 or 20 years. And so some of the people you're sitting next to who are inexperienced and new are going to be known as some of the greatest painters alive. And,
Right.
and so this is going to be happening I think in droves because of this movement and how it's changing, and also because it tends to be more women participating than men. I don't know why that is. I have no clue. I think it's great one way or the other.
Well, I do too, and I think that's what I was trying to say, which I was digging at myself a hole, but just the fact that, first of all, what we have access to. So think of it. I'm 45. I was, let's say 25 years ago, let's say 20 years ago. Look at how much it's changed. I remembered getting my first email, like my email account to do this Pashad thing in my 20s. And internet, I had to go to the library to get books to study from, the painters from the past. And so, and even hearing another female talk about, or another male, whatever, but you're asking about females, hearing their story that they can do it, is really inspiring. And just to be told, just to know that you can, and to have, look what you're doing with the podcast. People can listen to this for free. And they can go to a plein air convention and they can be exposed to things that it wasn't even a thing 20, 15 years ago. And so there's so much opportunity in ways to learn how to use your time and to achieve these goals. And so it doesn't matter if it's male or female, but it's changing because of the recognition in, we see what's happening with the movement in females right now. You just have to watch.
Well, and it's not just that recognition. It's plein air recognition in general too. Right. So when I started Plein Air magazine, and I would go out and talk to galleries about advertising, they would say, "Well, we don't carry plein air paintings. Plein air paintings are unfinished," and it's like, well, not really. In some cases, yes. In some cases, they're used to create studio paintings, but it's still important to draw these people in. And today, of course, there's a large number of galleries that represent plein air painters, and some of them are studio paintings and some of them not.
Right.
So all of those things are going to influence change. You mentioned the convention. Because of this podcast, we've had people who just stumbled into plein air painting. They didn't know about it. They might have seen something and clicked on a link and listened to it and then decided to start painting. We had, I think last year in Santa Fe, we had 200 people show up who had never plein air painted before in their life. They were either artists who had painted out of their studio but never had ventured outdoors. And surprisingly, about half of those people had never picked up a paintbrush, had never painted before. They went to the
Really?
convention. They got their lessons at the convention. They bought their supplies at the convention. They met other painters that they could collaborate with and learn from and sit up next to. And now, I don't have any statistics on it, but I would imagine a lot of them are still painting and a lot of them are still inspired. Maybe some of them gave it up. So these little things make a big difference.
Well, they do, and the ripple effect of these little things, it's huge, and that it's approachable, and that it's possible, and that it's not as intimidating. I think it was more intimidating before, and and it's hard for me to say because I'm in it, but I'm hearing that it's less intimidating. But people are always nervous to, start something new. But when it's in a big group setting like that, and there's others that are in the same place, it feels more approachable and attainable, and not quite as scary for them.
Well, I would imagine if you were let's say a college student, you decided that you were going to go to a surgeon's convention. You'd feel completely out of place because you haven't had the training. But the difference is if let's say you're somebody who decides you want to become a painter or explore painting or learn more about it, and you go and you're experimenting right there on the easel in front of other people or beside other people, there's this sense of, wow, that's pretty intimidating because you're kind of putting yourself out there. And yet the thing I think everybody needs to understand is that you and I and pretty much everybody else out there have been through that. You and I have produced lots and lots of really crummy paintings and thrown away a lot of dogs or redone them or scraped them down. And the fact that you put yourself out there is where the growth comes from.
It is. It's just stepping. It's kind of like in my goals of my improving my skills, my artistic goals. I have business goals, travel goals, spiritual goals, personal goals, and then just stepping up to the easel. Goals is just show up, and I've been cleaning out my basement where I have over 1,000 paintings that are just on the fronts and backs, and painted over, and canvas that's been taped up. And I had a student here yesterday, and we were going down to look for something, and she said, "Are you kidding me? Look at all these paintings." And I don't know. I've thrown a lot or painted over a lot, but I said, "Yeah, look at this. I was really bad not that long ago, and I think that inspired her to see that really it just wasn't always like this, and maybe in 10 years I'll go, what was I thinking, 10 years ago? But I look at the paintings, and in each one of those paintings, when I grab them and pick them up, I had a little piece in every single one. I might have been mad and thrown my brush that day, but every single painting I remember what I succeeded in that painting. And that's the thing that I think we need to kind of focus on when we're going through you have to get the crappy paintings under your belt syndrome kind of thing, get them out of there, get them out. But I think it's just so important to take a second and not just say how we're not doing or not to always point out the negative or where we want to be, but we're not. But let's just take a second in every painting and be grateful for what we did do. And even if we didn't accomplish any of the things that we thought we were going to accomplish in that painting, you now know what you need to work on, or you now know that that's done, and now try it again the next day. But I look at those paintings and I feel like they're just my journal of my life.
Well, they are, and that's why I don't ever throw away a painting, because first off, I want to remember the moment of doing it, painting with friends, being outside, being in a special place. But also, I'll take the piles and go through them once or twice, every couple of years, and then you really get that encouragement because you really can see your growth.
Right, and it's not a waste. It's just so not a waste. It's as much of a waste to paint and not end up with a painting as it is to buy books in college. My daughter's in college right now, and she has we have to pay for books or whatever that is. Nobody thinks that's a waste to spend money on education and books, although you get no product out of the book, So a lot of times I hear from students that, oh, I didn't get a painting. That's the first couple years of painting. I don't even have anything to frame. That's the very beginning, but that sheds, that goes away. But it's not about getting the product. It's about putting in the time and the process. And and we'll never get there, hopefully. Hopefully we never get there. We always have some place to go, because why would we paint tomorrow if we had arrived today?
Well, the biggest of the big, the greatest of the greats say things like, I was talking to somebody the other day, I'm trying to think who it was, but he said, I liked the way that this other artist did their skies, and I never have, really done skies like that, and I really wanted to master skies like that. So I attended a workshop. And, this was an artist whose work was selling for tens of thousands of dollars. And, from our perception, didn't need it. But he's like, no, I got to keep growing. And, I look at the names of every single order sometimes that come through when we're selling these art videos. And, you see big names who are buying those. I mean, people are going out there and trying to get better. And I think that's one of the things that keeps us young, too, is that, your brain is active and you're trying to grow and you're challenging yourself. So I think there's a lot of benefit to that.
Well, I know. I love that, too. And I love it. It just seems like the wiser and maybe I'm a better painter than I was before, but I'm just, I feel so much more humble, or so much, I don't have that. I just feel like the more I know I don't know, and what do I have to say, about that? Like, oh boy. And then I talk to, like you said, the painters that I admire the most, who I just think, oh, you've got to just be feeling great. And they're just no different, which is really cool. And I feel that way, about my students, and I get new students and they fly in for a class and they're all nervous, and I can't believe they're nervous to be here. But what's so cool is that I feel that way. I feel the same, and they can't believe I feel that way. And I am starting to just so enjoy all the processes, all the stages of a painter's life. And like, I love watching a student painter, which we're all students, but you know what I mean, that I just love the rawness in there when they're like trying to do something. And I think, boy, at one point I had a teacher tell me that I just wasn't ready, to get out there, and I was, it just wasn't time. And I do respect that. And I do think there is a time where you just need to kind of hunker down and get a bunch of work and get a nice cohesive body. But I also think we're never really ready completely. So I think it's okay to get yourself out there, even if you're not where you want to be, because there's something about, you learn a lot about getting out there too with your work. And people have different ideas about that, what is good or what is, but there's so many people starting to paint midlife and later life. And if they're looking at their, they're thinking of how much time, and I just think this is your life. It's really about what do you want to do with it.
Well, and time is one of the functions that matters, because I met someone recently who had started painting 3 or 4 years ago and who was doing really, really wonderful paintings. And I asked, how much time do you spend on this? And she said, all day, every day. Well, you spend all day, every day on something versus spending 1 hour on a weekend. There's a big difference. So, you can get to a level of proficiency if you're willing to put in the time and the study. And of course, if you can escape the ego trap of I'm self-taught, which is, I mean, some people are, and some people have done fabulous jobs with that. And I'm not being critical of that, but it's a whole lot easier to learn from somebody who's been through all the mistakes.
Well, right. I mean, why wouldn't you want to get the wisdom and the information from somebody? I think. I mean, I'm all about that. I'm all about learning. And I was just talking about self-taught, that it's, I mean, we all teach ourselves somewhat, but I can't, unless we're completely in a,
Vacuum.
cave. I think we're learning from others, even if we're not directly studying. There's a subconscious learning approach too, of just the influence, of those others around us. And
Well, we're learning from looking at books. We're learning from going to museums. Talk to me about what you've learned from teaching.
oh my goodness, teaching, I love it. I mean, what have I learned? I learned that I just keep learning. I'm inspired by teaching. I'm inspired. I'm nourished. It's taught me to be really organized. I will say that, because I fight that. But I have to be. Showing up, it kind of pairs with, I'm not necessarily always just inspired to paint, but painting inspires me. I'm not necessarily inspired to teach one morning, but I start teaching and it inspires me. So it's, I've forced myself to, I had such a desire to explain what the process is in my head. And it's a difficult thing. I'm actually I'm finishing my first book on color relativity and approach to using the limited colors to create the effect or the illusion of light through relativity. And that's what I teach. And what teaching has taught me is how to articulate and bring it and bring it through vocabulary, which is challenging for a painter because my language is paint. That's my voice is through paint. And sometimes I'd be really happy just not talking at all and just painting, but it's balanced out my brain, where my brain wants to be stronger on one side than the other, and it's tying it together, which is creating better balance in my life as a mom, as a painter, as a business person. It's just creating better health, and even the relationships and like what I'm seeing with development in like this community or kindred spirits, and the support that I have for them, they have for me, they have for each other. Just like a safe community to like fully be able to grow and develop. I'm amazed by the people. That's what I'm amazed by how good they are. Just good, supportive people. Hardworking, and it's taught me that.
I've probably said this before on the podcast, but my wife and I spent the first half of our lives around another industry. I'll leave it at that. Before I got into art, and then she started going with me to art events, and she said, "These people are so wonderful. They're all willing to help. They're all very giving. They're all very happy. They're smiling." And I said, it's because they're doing what they love. They're happy. They're satisfied. That's why I'm on this drive to get more people painting, because it changes people's lives. I'm not necessarily trying to create more professional painters. I don't want to create more competition, but if that's what they want to do, they should go for it. But the idea is it's heart changing. And I saw it in my own life. I mean, it's completely a different person than I was 20 years ago.
It's so neat. And I mean, you deal with, most of my students, not all of them, but they're accomplished at the top of their field, if it was their past life, or if it is their, past profession, or maybe they're wherever they are, but really intelligent people, and they're challenged and they're thriving off of the challenge. And I think I just have so much respect for someone that takes the time, spends the money, works this hard, because it's hard work. But what I'm finding is that people thrive when they're living to their highest ability, their potential, and I think that just the work feels good to painters, and it's a place it's a class time or a workshop time or painting time is a place to rein it in and focus and be pushed.
I've had doctors,
right.
one recently, who said to me, I can't wait to stop doing surgery so I can become a full-time painter. And, I'm sure he's making a lot of money and that may all change, but, it's like we look at that and go, wow, wouldn't that be cool? And he's looking at what we're doing and saying, wow, wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah. And I know what you're talking about because we've got Rochester here. So the Mayo Clinic.
Yep.
And I'm about a little under 3 hours, and I have many people who are physicians at the Mayo Clinic that come up and study, and they're challenged, and I'm at first I developed a class for a group of people that, heart surgeons, brain surgeons, they wanted to do a fundamental class, and I said I was full, and they asked, this is years ago now, but this is what started, my link to down there, and they wanted, I was so nervous. They wanted their own class with me, and they caravanned up. There was 9 of them.
Wow.
And I just set a price because I thought, well, okay, and they said yes. And this was, my kids were little. I couldn't even believe it. And I was so nervous because here I am going to be teaching people who are like the top of their field and, brain surgeon, a cardiologist, and it goes on and on and on. And they wanted to learn something, and they said how challenged they were. And then it got me really interested. We started in Stillwater here in the public schools. They started the Da Vinci Festival, where kids brought science and art, together. And then if you go back and study Da Vinci, science and art do go hand in hand. It's
Absolutely.
Very fascinating. It's that practice. They're practicing, and we're practicing, and there is science to painting. There is, and then there's that complete unknown that we'll never quite get, which kind of keeps certain minds driven to try to figure out more. So,
well, I suppose like anything, there's certain things that you get to a point where it becomes routine. If you're an auto mechanic or something, I mean, how to fix that car, and there are probably not very many challenges that you can't overcome. I would think it's more challenging for a physician who's trying to figure out a problem that maybe nobody has figured out. But I think even then, it kind of becomes routine. So not to target physicians.
yeah, I don't know how that's happened, but but it's just a comparison.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're kind of getting up on the edge of it now. What kind of final thoughts do you have for everybody?
Oh boy, well, I guess the biggest thing is thinking of your life and thinking of our life and how we want to spend it, and getting it starting to I think of my goals and gosh, how I want to spend the time and where I want the painting to take me, and maybe maybe not why you're doing it, because I've been asked that lately, like, why am I even, I have students ask, I don't even know why I'm doing this. But just because it's the process and it's the doing it that brings you joy, and try to focus on the joy, and work hard on that to become, keep going, keep painting, and not to be too hard on yourself with it, but to say yes to opportunities when they arrive, because that's what's really scary, is when you start learning and that's my new thing now. I worked really hard to say no to things for 20 years because I was overbooked, and now I'm getting these opportunities, and I'm learning how to say yes to opportunities and see where it will take me.
I attended a webcast the other day on goal setting, and you're big on goal setting. And one of the things they said was you set the goal, and then the problem is that you set this goal, but you keep telling yourself you can't do it, right? And then, of course, it talks about narrowing it down to little things. But they said that research indicates that if you just say, I'm going for it, I don't know how I'm going to do it, I don't know how I'm going to pay for it, I don't know how, whatever. If you just go for it, your brain will figure out the next step after you've gone for it. And so that's essentially what you're saying by saying yes.
Yeah, just do it. Just step, and don't wait for the inspiration, because that's I think people think that artists just run around all, in the fields, and they're all inspired, and we're so lucky. And I have to say, I don't think luck has much to do with this. I'm sure that there's some, but it's really just stepping up and making it happen. I mean, it really is. And
so are you saying that there are some days you don't feel like painting, but you just go out and start painting, and it
right.
eventually comes together, right?
Right. I am not inspired to paint. Painting inspires me. And I just know that now. I know it, and I'm not ashamed to say it. I mean, of course I think, oh, I wonder how I'd paint that tree on my walk, or, oh, that'd be a good painting. Yeah, but really, there's a million things that I love. I love so much. That's my problem. I just get excited. I love to cook. I love to garden. I love to clean. I love, I love to work out. But I set the time aside, and I know, and I write it down, and I say, you need to be at the studio at 8 this morning, Cami, which is walking across my driveway into a barn that I renovated and, going up here. But boy, I can procrastinate like the best of them. So I get here, and I have a plan, and I just start painting. And I might say, you're painting 3 hours today, to myself, unless I have a deadline like I did last night, which then I achieved it. But I might tell myself 3 hours, and I might do 3 hours, but I might end up doing 8 hours, and that's good. Any day that I painted is a good day, even if it didn't go the way I, was hoping it would. So don't wait for the inspiration. Make it happen. And the excuses at some point, I was going to be direct, and maybe I just will because I don't have another way. The excuses need to stop, because life is short, and you feel better when you're doing what you love.
So to the idea of excuses, somebody gave me some very good advice. I was learning to play guitar, and he said, I said, I need to play my guitar more often. He said, well, is it sitting out? I said, no, I keep it in the case. I got to pull the case out of the closet, and then I got to take the guitar out. And he said, no, put it on a stand and leave it set up where you spend most of your time, your office, your house, or whatever. So I have a guitar here in my office, one in my studio, one in the living room. And so now all of a sudden I pick it up all the time. And I think the same thing is true for paints. I now have a set. I keep a backpack filled so I can grab the backpack. I know the paints are in it. I know the Terps is in it. I know the canvases are in it. I know everything is there. And the temptation is to pull that stuff out and use it in the studio. And then you go out in the field and you forgot your white, which I did one time. And so I think the idea is look for ways to keep those excuses from happening, right? Because the excuse is, oh, I got to get the tripod. I got to get the paint together. The next thing you know, that beautiful sunset has gone down. Or keep a set in the back of your car.
That's what I do. And that's what I always tell my students, be ready, be ready. And, for instance, I try to remind myself that I'm going to get out in the field. Even like last week I was out, it's cold here, but even if I'm out 20 minutes, but I squirt my paint out in the studio ahead of time. I mean, I painted enough to know I don't need to lug all my tubes of paint out. I'm going to give myself a good, healthy squirt of the basic colors. And, I always probably have a tube of white and blue or something in there too, just in case. But I squirt that out ahead of time. In the winter here, we do car painting. I'm writing a whole chapter on that in my book. And I have a box in my car, and it's all ready. Same thing that you're saying, so that I don't have excuses or just that task seems overwhelming to me sometimes. If I haven't painted for a while and just getting my box ready again seems like a big deal. So I try to eliminate all that logistical kind of excuse that I might create. And if I'm painting in the morning, I kind of be prepared the night before, and I tell my classes too, I'm like, don't come here and, be cleaning your box from last week's paint, do that, get yourself in the game, get your head in the game the night before, so that you come in, you're fresh. And that's what we want to be when we're going out into the field or wherever we're going.
So go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, it just makes it more enjoyable. And yeah, so
when you're going out and you're painting in 20 below weather.
Yeah. Well, I don't do that.
You don't do that?
A lot of these, I'm going to say it, a lot of these guys around here do it. I used to do that, and now I don't. But I'll go out if it's like 10 degrees.
Ah, that's cold. I went up to, I was in Sun Valley earlier this week, and it had just had about 1.5 feet of snow, and I fortunately had my boots and my ski pants and stuff, but I went out and I painted, but my white got really, really, really stiff. What do you do about that?
I use a palette knife a lot if it's winter, or I'm liking, well, I use that the Radiant White is a little looser in the winter. I'm finding Radiant Gamblin White is really good for that. Just, experimenting with which whites. People use oil. I don't use any medium. I just use mineral spirits. But if it's really, really hard to push the paint, I will just use my palette knife.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll do my wash, just my wash and get my drawing in, and then mix the paint up and just try to really study color. And they're interesting that way too. So
the Russians put vodka in their white.
They do?
They mix vodka into it because it doesn't freeze.
Oh, that's perfect. That seems like a win-win. No.
Well, Cami, you're such a fluid conversationalist. I think we could talk forever, but every good thing must come to an end. So we'll have to do this again someday. But thank you so much for being on the PleinAir podcast.
Thank you. It was my pleasure and honor.
Well, thank you again to Cami Mendlik. What an easy interview. She's so articulate, really terrific, and she's very impressive, a rock star painter. And I'm really honored to have her on the show. So, Cami, thank you very much. What do you say we do some marketing now?
This is the Marketing Minute with Eric Rhodes, author of the #1 Amazon bestseller, Make More Money Selling Your Art, Proven Techniques to Turn Your Passion into Profit.
In the Marketing Minute, I try to answer your marketing questions, and you can always email me your questions. My email address is eric@pleinairmagazine.com. Here's a question from Francis in Dallas. Eric, in your book, you talk a lot about building celebrity. Isn't that a bit much? I mean, artists are not really celebrities. Well, Francis, I get your point and I respect it. But consider this. A lot of artists become celebrities. Some are even national celebrities. I mean, think about Norman Rockwell or Andrew Wyeth or Picasso or Salvador Dali. In their times, a lot of people became very famous. I mean, even Thomas Kinkade became very famous, right? But many are celebrities of sorts just in the art world. Like there are a lot of people in the art world who know who Richard Schmidt is, or C.W. Mundy, or Catherine Statz, or Casey Baugh, or Jeremy Lipking. Those people are stars in our world, in the world of collectors. So they're kind of celebrities, right? I think so. People love to associate with celebrities, or what they consider to be the best of the best. And when you're well known, you're kind of considered the best of the best. And that can help your career because you don't have to explain who you are or tell your story. It makes everything so much easier. It eliminates friction at the gallery. It eliminates friction at sales. I mean, in the art world, and you say Richard Schmidt, everybody's going to go, I already know who he is, right? And I'd love to own one of his paintings. That's the effect that you want. And galleries know it. And people, as a result, will pay better prices typically. They'll want to own something of yours because it makes them feel connected to you. And of course, because you're well known, they respect that even more. And though, it shouldn't really be that way because we should be known for just the quality of our paintings, but the quality of our paintings helps make us more well-known and celebrity, right? So that's kind of how it works. Anyway, maybe the word celebrity is a little too strong, but you could even become a local celebrity or local recognized artist anyway in your community, and you can really build that to your advantage. I know lots and lots of artists who are really well-known in their community or their region or their state, and like Rick Wilson, a friend of mine in Indiana, I mean, he and C.W. Mundy, really well known around Indiana. Rick's becoming more and more known. CW's been known for a long time. And so in Indiana, they're even more famous than most. And yet, of course, some of them are becoming famous or have been famous in the national scene as well. So that's pretty cool. Anyway, that stuff all helps your career, paves an easier path for you to sell more paintings and get more invitations to events over time, get invited into galleries, and it's worth considering. Now, that celebrity is built through a number of ways, and that can be built through marketing, public relations advertising. In our art marketing in a box product, we have a system that kind of teaches people how to do that kind of stuff and how to, just get out there, get known, get in front of the right charities, and get invited to those things and get highlighted at those things. So that's, anyway, a little touch on celebrity. The next question is from Kimberly in Chico, California. Kimberly says, I have a mailing list and I'm pretty good about sending things to my list. And I have been for about 10 years, but I'm not getting the kind of response and results that I used to get, and I'm not really sure why. Do you have any ideas? Well, Kimberly, first off, I've been to Chico, California. In fact, there's an old department store downtown Chico that is now an antique store, at least it was when I was there, and I bought a painting in there for about $20. Maybe it was even, I think it was $10. It was a kind of an old frame. It was very dark, and it had a big tear in it, and of course, everybody just ignored it. And I could kind of see through it, and it ended up, when I cleaned it up and fixed it, it turned out to be a really beautiful Hudson River School painting. I'm not sure who did it. It's not signed. It's probably not worth a lot of money, but it's worth more than $20, and it's beautiful. So to get to your question, a couple of things come to mind. The first thing is messaging. Whatever you are sending has to be wanted or has to be entertaining. And if it's mail or it's email, it's got to cut through the clutter, get them to pay attention. It needs to be useful and interesting or helpful. So you got to shake it up once in a while. If you have the same stuff, the same format you've been sending all the time, you're not going to get people paying attention. So shake it up, make it different, change the logo, change the look, make the content different, do some different things to get attention, and that will help people pay more attention to it. I get emails from, lots of artists who send me their newsletters. And some of them are really great, and I open them every time. And some of them are really boring, and I delete them without opening them. Why? Because I know which ones are great and which ones are boring, and the same people will know that about you. So don't be boring. So Kimberly, the problem, though, is probably not just being boring or maybe not getting attention. The most likely thing has to do with the management of your mail list. And this could be your direct mail list or your email list. There's a concept called attrition. Let's say you have 1,000 names on your mail list. And let's say that each year, 10% of those 1,000 names, which is 100 people, will move, die, drop off your list, or maybe not be in the market anymore. Maybe it's because they have too many paintings and they're retiring. That could be an average year. So for every year that you have not replaced those 100 names, you've lost names. So for instance, over 5 years, you would have lost 500 people. And you got to have at least 500 more people on the list just to make the list right. And it can't just be people. It's got to be people who are likely to be buyers. You don't want non-buyers. You don't want people who aren't interested in art. Yeah, you might be able to convince a few, but you want to look for the people that are the closest person to a sale, which is somebody who loves art, buys art. Maybe you met him at an art show, that kind of a thing. I don't know if you ever saw my art marketing bootcamp videos, but one of them I show this big picture of an elevator, and not an elevator, an escalator, and it's an up and down, right? There's one big row going down, there's one big row going up. And the point is that there are always people in and out of the market and in and out of your list. Let's say somebody inherits some money, Uncle Charlie dies and they get a few $1,000 and they've had their eye on something they love for a long time. They get that $1,000 burning a hole in their pocket. Guess where they're going to go? They're going to go out there. That's why advertising needs to be continuous, not on and off, because you want to cement ideas about paintings or your products in the eyes of people who are maybe saying to themselves, well, maybe someday. Maybe they even know they inherited the money, but they can't buy it yet till the lawyers send the check. Or maybe they get a better job or they get a bonus or something like that. So that's people coming into the market. People going out of the market, they retire, they lose a job, they have a financial crisis, the stock market crashes and they don't have any money anymore, and they may never return, right? So galleries experience this all the time, and galleries know typically that you have to keep advertising because advertising brings new people into your list. And if you're advertising in the right places, they're qualified people, right? So anyway, you always have to be mining for new names, not just names, but names of people who love art and typically people who have the money to buy it. You don't want to, it's okay to send your newsletter to somebody who doesn't have the money, but they're not going to buy anything. So just keep that in mind. Always be looking for new people. And people ask me, should I buy a list? No, typically not, because typically you want to build your own list. It's better that way. And there's expense associated with it. But you can be collecting cards and advertising and collecting leads. You want to make sure that everybody who comes to your website has a chance and an incentive to sign up for your website. That's really important. Anyway, hope that helps. Kimberly, right? Kimberly from Chico. Anyway, Kimberly, thank you. If you guys have anything you want to send, any questions, just send them to Eric at PleinAir Magazine. I hope this helped. Well, thank you again for attending the PleinAir podcast. I hope to meet you or see you at the PleinAir convention or in the Adirondacks at the Publishers Invitational. And if you've not seen this thing I do on Sunday mornings, it's called Sunday Morning. I get up on Sunday mornings, I write it, I send it out, and it's just kind of like, remember Chicken Soup for the Soul? It's that kind of a thing, only it's got some art involved. It's got, some just different thoughts and ideas in it. Anyway, I like doing it, and if you're interested, you can check it out. You can go to coffeewitheric.com, and that's where you learn how to sign up, and it's free. By the way, I love doing the PleinAir podcast. One of my favorite things, because I used to be in radio broadcasting. I used to be on the air. And, once a ham, always a ham, right? Anyway, let's do this again sometime like next week. I will see you then, God willing. I'm Eric Rhodes, publisher and founder of PleinAir Magazine. And remember, it's a big world out there. Go paint it. Bye-bye.
This has been the PleinAir podcast with PleinAir Magazine's Eric Rhodes. You can help spread the word about plein air painting by sharing this podcast with your friends. And you can leave a review or subscribe on iTunes so it comes to you every week. And you can even reach Eric by email, eric@pleinairmagazine.com. Be sure to pick up our free ebook, 240 plein air painting tips by some of America's top painters. It's free at pleinairtips.com. Tune in next week for more great interviews. Thanks for listening.